Welcome to Trauma, Psychedelics, and Buddhism with Karen Sprinkle, certified psychedelic guide, trauma therapist, and author of The Thriving Self. Drawing from over 30 years of experience in trauma therapy, embodied Buddhist practice, and immersive Eastern living, Karen explores the many paths to healing through conversation with Dharma teachers, scientists, and mental health professionals. Listen in and discover new ways of thinking about what it means to truly heal and to thrive.
Welcome to Trauma, Psychedelics, and Buddhism. This is Karen Sprinkle, and I'm so honored to be here with David Weinstein, MFT. And I'd love to tell you a little bit about David before we begin. So David is the founding teacher of the Rockridge Meditation Community in Oakland, California. He's a teacher in the Pacific Zen Institute and a therapist. His spiritual journey started in a bar in Germany, and his path has led him to Nepal, Afghanistan, Iran, India, Korea, Japan, Hawaii, and the Bay Area. So, David, I have so many questions for you. But first of all, I am so truly touched and honored that we're doing this. It's one of the biggest highlights of my lifetime.
Oh, well, I'm honored to be here, and I think it's important, a topic to be explored.
Thank you, and thank you for saying that. Obviously, you know, these are my three passions, and you know me so well, and I want the viewers to know that I've known you for 20 years, and you have been absolutely instrumental in my own healing journey, my healing path, my spiritual journey. You have represented so many different archetypal figures for me. They're so numerous, I can't even identify all of them, from spiritual teacher, psychotherapist, father, brother, friend, elder, clergy, brother, younger brother, older brother, all of it you've represented for me. So to be able to interview you is just so profound from my life. You have so many wisdoms and gifts to give to others. So I would love just to start by asking you, what is your journey? Like, what brought you to the bar in Germany in the first place? And how did you begin your dharmic path?
I'd forgotten about the bar in Germany till I heard you read that. And I'd have to say that it started even before the bar in Germany. And as I've been thinking about it and leading up to this, I was wondering, well, how early was it that I was interested in this kind of thing? And memory came back to me of being about 10 years old and being told to go to bed much too early and lying in bed awake and counting sheep didn't work. So what happened was I found myself lying in bed and doing a kind of projection into the future where I would figure out 10 years from now, my mother would be this old, my father would be this old, my grandparents would be this old. 20 years from now, they would be how old they would be. And I would go to the place where I'd have to say, well, they're probably not going to be here. And it was weird because there wasn't a whole lot of emotion involved. It was kind of like imaginary game, but not so imaginary. And why in the world was I doing that? What a strange thing to be doing. But it would take me off to sleep, thinking about, I couldn't say I was thinking about death. I was just sort of playing with numbers and ages and adding and like that. And then the next, so that definitely was something, and I don't know where that came from, but I do remember that somehow an awareness of death and how important that was when I first started meditating with the Tibetans later on. And then the next memory that came was about the same age, maybe a year or so older. I woke up with a severe pain in my abdomen, feeling hot and nauseous. And these are all the signs that my mother always checked when I had a stomach ache, because it could be my appendix. And, I threw up, and my mother came in and she took my temperature, and I had a fever, and she called the doctor, and the doctor said, bring him to the ER. So they brought me to the ER, and which they drew blood, and my white blood cell count was up. I had a fever, and you couldn't touch my abdomen without me hurting a lot. And they said, well, we're just waiting for the surgeon. Okay. I don't know how long we waited, not long, but the surgeon came in. And the moment I saw the surgeon, the pain stopped.
Oh my goodness.
And the surgeon came over and he says, how are you? And I said, I'm fine. And it says, it stopped hurting. And he said, now, don't worry. You'll be asleep during the operation. You won't feel anything. I said, no, really, it doesn't hurt. And he said, okay, just lie back. So he had me lie back, and he started palpating my abdomen, and there was no pain. They drew blood. It was normal. Took my temperature. It was normal. And the doctor goes, well, sometimes this happens. Something gets lodged in the appendix, and then it's jarred loose and blah, blah, blah. And then my mother says, oh, good. Now he won't miss his dentist appointment. And I, at that moment, was just dumbstruck with the power of my mind when I realized my mind did that. I hated the dentist. And it was not even conscious, but my mind had created a physical manifestation, and that blew me away. Okay. The next memory that came along was in college, where I took a hypnotherapy seminar. Well, no, I have to back up. I think the next thing would be psychedelics and drugs in general. I was very cautious and watched my best friend smoke pot for 6 months before I decided, okay, he's not going crazy. I think I'll try it. And but what I didn't want to try was what I had witnessed, which were a number of people trying to smoke pot and basically coughing through the joint and exploding it out. And even when they did get some smoke down them, then they're going, I don't know, am I stoned? I don't know. How's it feel? I didn't want that. So I decided when I was ready to try drugs that I didn't want there to be a question. So I took LSD. That was my first drug experience. And I went to a party, and I sat for quite a long time watching television in a room down the hall from where I was sitting, trying to figure out what show I was watching. It was in black and white, so I thought maybe I Love Lucy, I don't know. And it turned out that I was watching the shadow of a tree and a street lamp on a shade on the window. And it kind of blew my mind, because I had seen myself create reality.
Wow.
And it wasn't like I became particularly spiritual or anything, but it certainly made an impression. Once again, about the way the mind is just amazing. The next thing that came was thinking about a hypnotherapy seminar that I took, in which we got to practice on each other. And so the first time we broke off into dyads and went to a quiet room somewhere. I volunteered to be the subject, so my partner was going to induct a trance. And I think I was holding like a watch or something and watching it do something. And I'm thinking like I'm playing along, basically. trying to cooperate and okay, and close my eyes, okay. And my partner says, I'd like you to go back to a recent pleasant experience. And she said, try to, envision the room, the smells, the sounds, everything, as much detail as possible. Well, my mind immediately went back to the night before when I had been sitting around with friends, smoking pot and listening to music. And I'm remembering the room, and I'm remembering the people who were there and the music that was on and kind of incense we were burning so that the smell of the pot wouldn't be detectable or something. And I suddenly got an incredible rush from the top of my head to the tip of my toes. And I was just stoned on my butt. And I broke out into a smile. And my partner, who was a woman, I could hear a certain uncomfortableness in her voice as she asked me if it would be okay if I told her what was going on. Because for all she knew, I was, at an orgy or something. And I told her what had happened, and, it was like a great relief, I think, for her to know it was that. But I, again, was just amazed because no drugs were involved. I did not think that was a flashback. I thought that was like my appendicitis. My mind did that. Wow. Amazing. And again, it didn't lead me down the path of reading spiritual books or smoking more pot because I thought that was the answer either. It was just somehow filed away. And then, I guess some years later, we get to the bar in Germany where working as a bartender. It's a U.S. Armed Forces Recreation Center in Garmisch-Partenkirchen, southern Bavaria on the border with Austria, 15 minutes from Innsbruck. And at the base of the tallest mountain in Germany, the Zugspitze, it was like a Disney version of Bavaria. It was really amazing, great place. And I got a job there in a bar. It's kind of crazy bar. The bartenders, we used to practice jumping over the bar because we had to do it so much to break up fights. And, military bar drinks were 50 cents each. And people got very drunk. And there was this one guy who got hired after I'd been there for a while, named Jimmy, who was hired as a sort of busboy dishwasher for the bar. And there was something about the way he could walk through this chaos of a dance floor and drunks at tables and whatever in a way that just caught my attention because he just flowed through it and didn't seem to be touched by it. And we got to be friends. We both liked to smoke pot. He was a really good musician and played the guitar. And we'd sit around listening to him play the guitar and smoking and talking. And he and his girlfriend, every once in a while, would mention something about a meditation course they had gone to in Nepal with the Lamas. Mm-hmm. And they didn't talk about it much. It just came up like they'd remember some story or something. And I can't say I connected the dots a whole lot, like, oh, that's got something to do with the way he flows. But it was, again, sort of filed away with all these other experiences, I think. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't know, some 3-4 years later, I find myself in Nepal because I want to see the Himalayas. I want to trek. I want to smoke that hash. Really, that's why I went. Mm-hmm. Maybe in that order. There was the mountains and then the hash. And I think my first trek was the Jomson trek out of Pokhara. And as I'm trekking, each evening when I stop at some place to spend the night, I bump into a different group of people who are talking about the meditation course they're going to with the lamas. And I'm going, oh, yeah, I heard about that. Huh. Okay, that's interesting. And it just kept happening again and again and again. And, I didn't have any plans. I was in Nepal, relatively rich, having taught English for a year in Iran, and with no plans of doing anything more than continuing my education by traveling, really. Mm-hmm. So I thought, I didn't even have so much of a sense of the Tao sort of carrying you and feeling like the universe is, I didn't quite have that. It was more like, well, I got nothing else to do. It's $50 to spend the month there, room and board. It's a meditation course. Well, I'm interested in meditation. I'd like to learn about it. I'm envisioning lectures and taking notes and like that, maybe a little meditation, but that is not the main thing. And so I decided to go. And I went and got there and found out that it's in a monastery, but okay, my sort of aversion to allergy to religion was able to handle that. And, but, after, on the first evening, there's 200 of us gathered in a big tent, sitting on cushions, on grass mats, and there's this great big high seat with all kinds of bright colors decorating everything. And, and people are bowing. I don't mean bowing, they're prostrating, full length, all out, arms stretched out and everything. And I'm beginning to think, I feel like maybe I've fallen into a cult. But I keep remembering Jimmy, and Jimmy wasn't in a cult. And I thought, okay, I've probably comforted myself with the thought, $50 room and board for a month. How bad could it be? And I endured it. I just watched it, and I watched my everything. And then the lamas came in. There were two of them. And the first one who came in was Lama Zopa, who was tall, thin, and frail looking. And although I didn't even know I had an archetype of what a holy man looked like, he looked like a holy man. Mm-hmm. He was walking with his eyes averted. And it was as if he was trying to make sure he didn't step on insects or something. It was my projection. And he gets on the highest of the thrones. There's another one that's lower. And then this guy comes in. I say guy, Lama. But he comes in and he's like jolly, a little roundish, smiling and waving to everybody like he's a celebrity or something, laughing. And I'm going, oh, I don't know about him. I immediately have an aversion because he's suspicious. Lama Yeshe. Uh-huh. But when I listen to them talk, and I think that first evening, Lama Zopa talked about death, which was kind of his thing at the time. Something in me resonated with that. Going back to, doing the projection of my relatives into the future and how old they would be. Mm. And the way Lama Yeshe talked about suffering and laughing as he talked about it, and how he used chocolate a lot as examples certainly got my attention because I really like chocolate. So that got, and also both of them were speaking English as a second language, and they were really good, but they had accents, and their vocabulary was somewhat limited, so they had to say things in a roundabout, simple way that forced me to listen. Mm-hmm. And I did. And I meditated, and it was a guided meditation, which was good because my mind was pretty wild. And having a story to come in my ears and a visualization to work on and help to sort of give my mind things to do while I explored other areas. And perhaps most important of all, my difficulty going to sleep disappeared.
Oh,
I was suddenly able to lie down and at first I thought turn off my mind, but no, it was just, I was just able to let my mind do its thing and not pay attention to it.
oh, I love that description. Mm-hmm.
And that was what meditation was for me. And when I realized that, I remember telling myself, I don't care anything else about meditation practice. If it helps me sleep at night, I'm going to do it for the rest of my life. And I kind of made a commitment there and then for that reason. I didn't know about saving all beings or any of that stuff. It was like, it's going to help me sleep. Sign me up. So the meditation course was 1 month long. And at the end of the month, if you wanted to, you could stay a second month. And I wanted to, and I did. Because the meditation was really interesting. And I found that the talks from the Lamas very helpful and interesting. Although I had to get a little help with that because at first it was too traditional and I couldn't quite get through my prejudice of traditional kind of couched language. And a friend came up and said, gave me a book which was Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism by Chogyam Trungpa. And he said, read this. And I read it and I thought, wow, this is great. But I said, but is this the same stuff that the Lamas are talking about? So I got a chance to talk to Lama Yeshe with the book in my hand. And I said, Lama, do you know this guy? He goes, oh, yes, we went to school together. Is he saying the same thing you're saying? Oh, yes. And that kind of solved it because from that point on, as I listened to the Lamas, I got an instant translation via Trungpa as to what they were saying. And it was Trungpa was very psychologically oriented. So it really made sense and resonated with me. I was grateful. I am grateful to Trungpa. I never met him, and I know he was a imperfect human being, but nonetheless. So I did a second month. Starting halfway through the first month, you had the option of trying to practice silence, which I found intriguing and inviting. And if you were going to do that, you wore a little, I think it was yellow ribbon, which people knew, oh, he's practicing silence. I won't try to start up a conversation. So I did that for the last 2 weeks of the first month, and for the entire second month, I practiced silence. That's about 6 weeks of silence. So now it's the end of November. And if you want to stay, you can stay a third month, they said. And I'm saying, sign me up. And now I'm starting to wonder if I need to shave my head and put on robes.
Wow.
And there was going to be a refuge ceremony, where, as I understood it, it meant I was signing up to be a Buddhist and also signing up to make Lama Yeshe my teacher. And I had reservations about that because a lot of the ways people talked about their relationship with lamas put me off. You know, the guru told me to do this. The Lama Yeshe told me to whatever. And I had the opportunity to be in a group meeting with Lama Yeshe and 3 or 4 other students to ask questions. And one student question was whether they should go home or not because their parents were missing them. And he hadn't been home for a while and he didn't know what to do. And Lama Yeshe said, well, how long have you been away? And your parents, they're missing you, yeah. Basically, Lama Yeshe was a good therapist and just reflected the situation back to him. And that was it. I got to ask Lama Yeshe about my resistance to having a teacher. And And his response is still with me. He said, oh, having a teacher is not having a relationship with another human being. It's a state of mind in which you are open to learning from everything, everywhere, all the time. And I heard him say that. I thought, oh, you're my teacher.
Yeah.
So I took refuge and went off to a individual retreat for a month after that. So that was like basically 4 months of retreat. That's how I started my meditation practice, and 3 months of silence. And when I came out of that down into McLeod Gunj, where the Dalai Lama's palace is in Dharamsala, and started talking, that was kind of amazing. I was listening to myself say things I didn't know I thought or knew even. And, I was, it confirmed that meditation was a good thing for me, And hung out, went to Afghanistan, and I went from the west to the east, from Herat to Kabul across the north, where there are no roads, in the back of Russian-built jeeps, and stayed in places that hadn't seen many people like me, and that was great. I saw, in a place called Kunduz, I watched the Afghan national game being played, which is buzkashi. It's sort of like polo, it's horseback, but they don't have clubs and they don't have a ball. What they have is a goat carcass with the head cut off, stuffed with wet sand, sewed up, that weighs about 50 kilos, and slits cut in the back leg to the bone, and that's the handle. And it's laid down in the center of a large field, and the two teams are on opposite ends, and it's first person to the goat gets it. And the team who drops it in the other opposing team gets the point. And this game I watched was being sponsored by the Afghan National Olympic Committee, and the International Olympic Committee was there evaluating this submission for buzkashi to be made an Olympic sport. That was just, you can't make that up.
No.
Anyhow, then I went back to Nepal, and I did another 3 months with the Lamas, meditating, doing the course again, and practicing silence again. And then I kind of ran out of money. And I went to Korea because I knew I could get a job there. And I did. I got a job at a university teaching English, learning Korean. Connected with a Zen group where I met my first Zen teacher, really. Maybe my second Zen teacher, but the first koan practice Zen teacher I met was a Korean who didn't speak a lot of English, named Kusan. And his first instruction and only instruction to me about how to practice koan Zen was make your mind a question mark. Which I still carry with me. So I was in Korea for a year, saving money, kind of, and teaching English and having a good time, and enjoying it, and thinking that I wanted to stay longer after I'd been there almost a year. And I had a ticket that I had purchased in Bangkok that took me back to San Francisco via Korea, Japan, Hawaii, San Francisco, that I was told I could extend for a year. In those days, you could do that, I guess. And I went to Korean Airlines with my ticket, intending to extend it for a year, and I was told that I couldn't because the travel agency in Bangkok that I got my ticket from went bankrupt, and Korean Airlines never got the money for the ticket. So they would honor the ticket, but they would not extend it. The ticket expired in a week.
Oh.
And I took it as a sign. I have no idea why. It was like, okay, although I have a great job that I really like and I'm learning a language and all the benefits of speaking a language in a foreign country and I have a life here, it's time to go. And I gave notice. I said goodbye to my friends. And I figured that I wanted to go as far as Hawaii because I wasn't ready to be in San Francisco after being away from the States for a long time. And this is a long story.
Oh, it's beautiful. Keep going.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I arrived in Hawaii figuring my culture shock would be less than arriving in San Francisco. And also because the friend who I left the States with 7 years prior was living in Honolulu. I thought, but he had moved on, unbeknownst to me, in 1979, and no internet, and So I'm in Honolulu, not really wanting to go to the mainland. So I figured I'll kill some time for a while and catch my breath. And I went up to the University of Hawaii because universities are usually interesting places to hang out. And University of Hawaii in Manoa is beautiful. It's a tropical paradise. And I'm walking through this tropical paradise and found the student union and a cup of coffee and a bulletin board that had all kinds of, 8.5 by 11 mimeographed flyers for different programs going on around the university, and some from the religion department. There's such a thing as a religion department, I wondered. And the kind of offerings I saw were workshops on Taoism, Confucianism, Zen, Buddhism, Hinduism, and Christianity. Well, that was kind of interesting, got my attention. So I went to the religion department because, I don't know, I thought it was curious. And got to the religion department, and I'm standing outside their office, and they had another bulletin board with yet more blurbs for things. And there was a voice behind me asking me if he could help. And it was one of the professors named David Chappell. And I told him that, no, I was just sort of passing through town and I saw that I didn't know there could be a religion department. And I just got back from Asia myself, and I've been practicing Buddhism kind of intensively for a while now. And he heard that and said, would you like a cup of tea? And I said, sure. So we got a cup of tea and went to his office, and I told him my story, what I've been doing. I had a bachelor's degree in psychology and planned to go to graduate school, and sort of took a vacation. And he looked at me and says, you're exactly the kind of person we want as a graduate student in the religion department. I can offer you a teaching assistantship. You won't have to pay to go to school. You'll get paid to go to school.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm thinking, it kind of set off a resonance with the experience of my ticket not being extended in Korea. I thought, this is very weird, but something's here. So I said, let me think about it. And I went down to back to the student union where I saw the blurbs for the religion department. Got another cup of coffee, and I was just sitting there kind of dumbfounded, really, in shock, I don't know. Not thinking a lot, just looking at the beautiful scenery, and my mind was kind of blank. And I saw another bulletin board that got my attention for some reason. I went over to it and looked at it, and it was filled with 3x5 cards that were all advertisements for housing. And it was beginning of June, and the term was over at the university, and the students who had been renting places during the school year had left, and there were a lot of vacancies. And I saw a vacancy that was across the street from the university that turned out to be a renovated garage that had a private bath with shower, which was about twice as big as the room I'd been living in Korea for a year. And the rest of the house had been turned into a dentist's office, so there was no activity after 6 p.m. or something. and it was cheap. And I thought, And then I dug this piece of paper I got at when I was at the first meditation retreat in Nepal. Someone gave me at the end of 3 months meditating together. He gave me this piece of paper with some addresses on it and said, as you're traveling around, you might check out some of these places as places to meditate. And one of the places was in Honolulu, and it was the Koan Zendo, and it was a 5-minute walk from the dentist office. So I'm looking at a place to practice, a place to live, and a job just fell into my lap. And I said yes. And that's when I started practicing a kind of combination Zen Tibetan practice, because I kind of hated the Zen practice and went to the Tibetan practice in refuge. I didn't like koan practice at all. I didn't like going in to talk to a teacher and basically feeling humiliated in 15 seconds and then wrung out. Nope. Literally 15 seconds. And other people are in there for like 15 minutes. And not only are they in there for 15 minutes, they're laughing. So definitely did not like koan practice, and informed the teacher there that I was not going to do koan practice. And felt much better after that. I think he did too. And I liked the community. I liked the people. I liked sitting silently, doing my practice, which is silent. Nobody has to know that I'm reciting a mantra and having a visualization going. Doesn't make any difference. I found some of his talks interesting and helpful, maybe. And meditating together is helpful in community. Community is one of the treasures, So, I was there for 3 years, and then I got an offer to go to Japan as a visiting scholar from the University of Hawaii to a Zen university in Tokyo.
Oh, wow.
And to do research on a master's thesis on Morita psychotherapy, which is said to be a Zen-influenced psychotherapy. So I wrote up a research proposal, which was accepted, and I got to go to Japan and to do that. Of course, when I got to Japan, I found out that after 3 years of studying Japanese at the University of Hawaii, conversational Japanese, and passing a graduate level Japanese proficiency test, which was written a translation basically with as many dictionaries as you want. But if you can use a dictionary and get a translation, that's good enough. So I could do that. I couldn't not order a hamburger at McDonald's, though, and be understood, nor understand what was said back to me. And how am I going to do research on a Japanese form of psychotherapy with therapists who probably don't speak English? So there was that. But I also had a letter of introduction to the Zen teacher in Kamakura, about 60 miles south of Tokyo. I had a dormitory room in Tokyo at the university as part of my fellowship. And they didn't know what to do with us scholars from Hawaii being not Japanese. They didn't want to mix us with the general population. So they put us in the baseball team dormitory. Which is really interesting because the Komazawa University, Zen University baseball team at the time were the national champions. They meditated every morning. And I think they were meditating as they walked up and down the corridors, swinging baseball bats too. So that was an interesting place to have a room. But I also had a room courtesy of the Zen community in Kamakura, because the Zen teacher in Hawaii was a student of the Zen teacher in Kamakura, Yamada. And I had a letter of introduction to practice there. And I look forward to having a community to practice with again, though I kind of dreaded meeting the teacher because, well, as I had told the previous teacher, I don't practice with koans, and in some people's estimations, Yamada was the eminent teacher of koans in English in the world. So, okay. I actually spent more time in Kamakura than Tokyo because the dormitory was kind of noisy, and joined the community there, continued my Zen practice there. And early on, met the teacher and gave him my letter of introduction, which he kind of put aside and never opened. And he asked me, so what is your practice? And that would be a question that a koan student would say, my koan is such and such. And my response was, I do not practice with koans. I practice shikantaza, which is basically, sitting with what is. Basically, sitting just as is, a kind of translation. No particular form, it's just sitting. And I braced myself physically because I thought he might kick me out, literally. And what he did was he sucked air through his teeth, which Japanese do when things are difficult or something. And he says, oh, shikantaza, very difficult practice. Not many people come to realization practicing shikantaza. Maybe the last person who came to realization practicing shikantaza was Dogen. Dogen was a 12th century Zen practitioner. And then he followed up very quickly, but I want you to come to realization practicing shikantaza. Please practice diligently. And you could have knocked me over with a feather.
Wow.
Of course, there's a bit of trickster in, I think, all Zen teachers, perhaps. And there was in him too. And after that, after he knocked me over with a feather, he says, but I have one question I want to ask you. And I don't want you to answer. And I don't want you to think about it. And I may ask you about it again some other time. And I said, okay. And he asked me this question, which was, how do you stop the sound of the distant temple bell? And I thought, weird question. That's about what I thought. And I thought, I'm glad he told me not to think about it and that I didn't have to answer. Cool. I'm going to survive, and this maybe even more than survive, because when he said what he said, I felt I had been seen in a very deep way. So that was important. Yeah. And so I practiced with him, and he gently, as it turned out, that question about stopping the bell of the temple in the distance is a koan. And I'm so grateful to my Tibetan teachers who told us to never talk about our practice with anyone else. I didn't know it was a koan. I never told anybody else it was a question he asked me. I never thought about it much to begin with, really. And he gently led me through an entire collection of koans without me knowing it, before he informed me that he thought maybe I should try koan practice again, which I know now, looking back and what I know now. So there was that part of my spiritual journey. And then there was leaving Japan 7 years later, after practicing there 7 years, and giving up my ideas of wanting to be a scholar about religion and writing a thesis about Morita psychotherapy and its Zen connections, which I got to the point after studying Japanese intensively for 2 years, 5 days a week, 5 hours a day in class and probably 5 hours of homework and immersed in the Japanese language as I lived there, to being able to say yes to being invited to make presenting a paper at the annual conference of Morita psychotherapists in Tokyo about my proposed research. Finally, I'd been there for over 3 years, and I'm ready to actually propose my research to these people I want to do research with on together. I don't know. And in Japanese.
Wow.
Which was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, writing that speech, basically. And I delivered it successfully. I answered questions adequately. And on the train back to Kamakura from Tokyo, I was absolutely clear I never wanted to do that again. And absolutely clear that what I wanted to do was to be a therapist, not do research about therapy. And the next day I called the Tokyo English Lifeline, TEL it was called, which was a organization that was formed by a coalition of churches in Tokyo, English language churches, to service people who were in need in the Tokyo area who were English language speakers.
Oh, cool.
And staffed by all volunteers. And I signed up for, there was a 3-month training to be one of their telephone counselors. Some of the best training I got anywhere.
Huh.
And how to listen, basically, how to listen, how to reflect. It was just basic stuff. And so I did that, and it just confirmed, yep, this is the kind of work I want to do. I wanted to check it out. I think I want to do that kind of work. Let me do that kind of work to see. And it was, and I did, and yeah. And then it was time for me to, I'd gotten married and was thinking about doing it professionally in Japan, because at the time, the economy was booming and multinational corporations had flooded Tokyo with all kinds of people who brought their families, who were in distress because the husbands were working like Japanese businessmen, leaving the wives to do everything else. Marriages were falling apart. There was a lot of stress, and English-speaking therapists were doing good things in servicing that community. And I thought, great, I'll go to the States, spend a couple of years, get a degree, get a license, come back, and that's my life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had to figure out where I wanted to go, and just about the time I got down to thinking I want to go to CIIS in San Francisco or Naropa in Boulder, the decision was kind of made for me when one of my friends from the Hawaiian Zen community, who had been made a Zen teacher, moved from Hawaii to Santa Rosa, California, and then started a small community there. And that was like the opportunity to practice Zen with a peer was really inviting. So I chose CIIS and reconnected with John Tarrant, who had founded the Pacific Zen Institute, who is a psychotherapist himself. And as much as I appreciated the koan practice in Japan with my teacher there, Yamada, a couple of times I would come in because to have a conversation with Yamada. And as I'd been spending time with the koan, I'd have the experience of like say, stopping the sound of the distant temple bell. I'd have that something in my life would remind me of that or parallel that or be that even. And I would bring that into the teacher and relate the story to him, and he would listen and nod. And then he would say, yes, well, back to the koan. Because that wasn't something he did himself. He admitted it was something he needed a teacher for himself, actually, and he was working on himself. But with John, a friend and therapist, I could do that. I could bring it in. And I did. And it changed the whole way that we practice with koans, because rather than only honoring these traditional answers that have been handed down generation after generation, which I honor, they do the trick, but they're not the only answers.
Yeah.
Plus, there's the answers in our life that were never asked the way it was practiced in Japan or Korea, as far as I know. You were never asked, well, how does your understanding of that appear in your life? You know, what if you had a dream and that was your dream? What would it be saying to you? That kind of way of exploring it, which was kind of revolutionary for me to be able to do that and bring that in, and for all of us as we practice and continue to do that. And so, you know, as a therapist, it's just, this is one of the most powerful methodologies I've ever experienced in terms of working with my own stuff. And it's not just dreams or images, it's a whole practice that supports the ongoing integration of that into our lives, which psychedelics don't do.
Yeah.
They open the door. Reeling it back some, back to the Lamas in that first 3-month period with them.
Mm-hmm.
When Christmas came around, one of the members was walking around giving people something. I saw him. And he came up to me. He says, hold your hand out. And he put a little square piece of something in my hand that had double door J's embossed on it. And he says, that is absolutely the best pure acid you will ever take. I give it to you with one condition. You must take it in a controlled environment. I said, thank you. And I thought, I've been in a meditation retreat for almost 2 months. I'm in a monastery. What more kind of controlled environment is there? And that was early in the morning. And it was it was like I could sit and meditate. It was hard to keep my visualizations were spectacular, vivid, but they wouldn't stand still. They kept dancing. And I couldn't control them. And people were turning into animals and all kinds of stuff was happening. And my body was absolutely serene. It was just totally clean, amazing acid. And then I got paranoid because Lama Yeshe was going to come in and give us a talk. And for some reason, I was sure he was going to know I was tripping on acid. And I was just very paranoid about that for a little while. And then it dawned on me, so long as I don't make eye contact with him or look at him, I'll be okay. So he came in and he came in and he always came in waving at everybody like he's a performer. He kind of was. And I'm looking down. And I couldn't keep looking down because I'm tripping on acid and I'm looking down and the mat's turning into an ocean and there's animals coming out and I have no willpower. And I look up at the Lama and I did not make eye contact, but just seeing him, and I was straight, not tripping. Oh, wow. If I looked away, I was tripping my ass off. If I looked at him, I was not tripping, which was pretty trippy to have happen. And it happened, and it stayed that way during his entire, hour talk. As long as I looked at him, I was clear. No hallucinations, no mind wandering. I was just there. And I'd look away, and it was like somebody flipped a switch in my brain. And I'd look back at him. And I think it was sometimes later after that. Well, that told me something sort of equally powerful. I mean, there it is again about the mind and how powerful it is.
And your ability to track your mind and not take it too seriously. The flexibility you had of your own mind.
Yeah, it is. Well, you know. One time in Hawaii, Yamada, the teacher from Japan, had come while I was still in Hawaii to, I don't know, maybe he was passing through on his way to leading a retreat somewhere on the mainland. He's going to visit his student, something, say hello. And he was going to give a talk during our evening meditation. And prior to that, a small group of us had dinner together with him at a Chinese restaurant down the road from the Zendo in Honolulu. And we're sitting at this big round table with the big lazy Susan thing. And the waitress comes and takes our order. And after she takes all our orders, she says, and to drink. And you could hear a pin drop. Everybody's just sort of looking around the table because normally we get a Tsingtao beer to go with dinner. And finally, Yamada says, well, aren't you going to get something to drink? And then one of the members of the group says, well, we're going to meditate after this, so probably wouldn't be a good idea to drink anything. And Yamada's response was sort of to crack up laughing. He says, well, our minds are always under the influence of something. So everybody ordered a beer, and she got to him, and he said tea, but he chose caffeine, he would say.
Yeah.
And again, reeling it back to the lamas in Nepal about drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Once, as we were waiting for Lama Yeshe to come in and give a talk, there were 200 people in this meditation course. And one of the people yells from the back, hey, how many people are here because of drugs? And like half the people raised their hands. So when the Lama opened it up for questions and answers after his talk, the same guy stands up and said, hey, Lama, half the people here are here because of drugs, they say. What do you say about that? And his response was, well, dear, drugs are like a bridge. And like a bridge, when you use it to cross over to get to the other side, you don't take it apart and carry it on your back.
Oh, wow. That is
So that's from a very traditional Tibetan. Well, maybe not so traditional Tibetan, but, steeped in the tradition.
Yeah.
I suppose the other thing about spirituality and drugs that comes to mind is participating in the Amarnath pilgrimage in Kashmir to a cave considered to be a place for Shiva, which is at 12,000 something feet. And there's an ice lingam in the cave that people make the trek during a short period in the summertime when there's no snow. And it's a 3-day trek from the town of Pelgam where I was staying, and I happened to be there during that pilgrimage time. And I thought, well, 3 days, Shivites, they're kind of cool. They like to smoke a lot of dope. I thought, I'll hang out with the sadhus. And I did, but it was different than I would have expected, actually. I'd hung out with sadhus and smoked hash with them before, but I never hung out with a sadhu who actually was practicing meditation as he was smoking, and bumped into this one sadhu who was sitting by the side of a place where 2 rivers came together, roaring rivers came together, and it was roaring so loud that I couldn't hear my own voice.
Oh, wow.
And this is where he was. He had his trident stuck in the ground, his brass pot hung from it with water in it, and there was a fire going, waiting for somebody to come and bring tea or food or something. This is a sadhu. That's what he's got. Nothing really, except his chillum pipe and maybe some hash. And I thought, well, I'd go over and see if I could maybe smoke some hash with him. And we did. And after smoking a fair amount of hash, I got to say, he took his cloth, threw it over his head, and sat there for about an hour meditating.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
And I sat there trying to meditate, which kind of felt like swimming through oatmeal in my mind. But I was inspired by him and hung out with him for a while doing that, meditating in the silence of a roaring stream, and kind of discovering how, well, how true it is. My mind is always under the influence of something, and being under the influence of a drug doesn't have to be, is just part of the experience, really, and to be looked into and inquired into, and not only for enjoyment and recreation,
Mm-hmm.
And anyhow, that came up in terms of that question about psychedelics and spiritual practice. I think it's been there from the beginning.
Yes.
And we're just catching up with, the ancients.
Exactly. Yeah. David, this has just been so extraordinary to hear your history and what's brought you to now. So I have so many questions for you, like so many, especially that point that you decided to kind of incorporate koan practice. And you also just said if someone does psychedelics, they need something more, and that's what the koan practice brings. So what would you do when you have a Dharma student that approaches you that wants to do psychedelics and then wants to sit with you, for example, or wants to be on a Zen retreat and wants to do psychedelics, or has experimented recreationally versus in a psychotherapeutic setting? Like, how do you respond to all of that?
We currently work with people who are microdosing psilocybin, Zen students
I see.
who have, explored more than microdosing, certainly.
Mhm.
Also, I've worked with a number of people in my therapy practice who microdose psilocybin, LSD, and witnessed how it helped.
Yeah.
A ketamine,
Yes.
more recently, ketamine, and how much it helps people. And how important it is that the experience they have in a ketamine session is part of, in the context of some other work they're doing with the therapist to integrate that experience into their life. Otherwise, it's kind of like going to a concert or a workshop or something. It's great while you're there, but then it kind of fades over time.
Totally.
A retreat's like that.
Yeah.
Although I think it's one of the hidden blessings of the pandemic was we had to go digital and had to have 7-day meditation retreats digitally where people were already at home. So the integration of home, there wasn't that sort of place where I'm leaving the place where I meditated and going home. Oh no, you're already home. And
Wow,
that's about
how powerful. Yeah.
very powerful.
Yeah. And I would imagine that as we talk about set and setting of psychedelics too, and how the set and setting is so vitally important, like doing something in a hospital versus in someone's home,
Yes.
psychotherapeutic office. Yeah. So if someone were to listen to you right now and they had a difficult experience with a psychedelic journey, what would you say to them about that? How would you help a Zen student that, had a kind of either traumatic memory or a difficult journey experience?
Ah, yeah. That's where it gets really close. Like, well, how much of this is about the Zen practice, meditation practice, and how much of this needs to be sort of about therapy? Because, and there's a hair's breadth of difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I got to say, it's kind of case by case, and um, uh, depends on what it feels like to me. In some cases, it's like, okay, I'll be with a Zen student. I'm interested in exploring an early memory that might have come up that would be connecting to the trauma, and I'm interested in exploring it and exploring how it is affecting their behavior now. And for me, that's as much meditation practice as it is psychotherapy,
Yeah, totally. Totally.
right?
Yeah.
And and appreciating the karma, basically, I could say, the cause and effect, the chain link cause and effect of, okay, and appreciation of what you're experiencing now is not about now, and how much more that makes an impact when someone's practicing now, being now. They know what now feels like.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So similarly, if someone has a lot of trauma in their background, would you caution them against maybe trying psychedelics, or would you feel that might help them along
Oh,
their healing journey?
yeah. Yeah. It can go either way, can't it? I guess, again, it feels like, and it's the same with the Zen practice. There are some people who should not actually even any kind of, there are some people who have to be very careful about the kind of meditation practice they do because they don't have a strong enough sense of self to endure the deconstruction that meditation leads to.
Exactly.
So, Zen, might not be the right medicine. Something more like mantra might help because you get something to hold on to, and it's got that rhythm going or something. And yeah, what was the question again?
Oh, you answered it. So
Okay.
it's a case by case, right?
Right. I'm not wed to koan practice being the only way. It's just one way that happens to be, seems like the best way for me. But I'm familiar with other ways, and so totally support their, again, it's the right medicine for the right. Tibetan practice was absolutely the right medicine. If I would have run into Zen practice first,
Yeah.
I never would have been able to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm so grateful for, well, Jimmy, I guess,
Yeah.
that it was a Tibetan practice I ran into that gave me all of those skillful means to work with my wild mind.
Oh, this is so beautiful, David, to witness you share your story and all the nuggets that came along and your sense of gratitude. And you brought up being held by kind of the wave, the Tao perspective, right? And it
Mm.
sounds like you already had that before you embarked on the study of the mind, right? The Dharma. You already had that sense of there's some larger wave that's carrying us.
Um, well, I could say that we all get intimations of it, but we don't notice them.
Yeah.
And I really, um, when I tune into a wave of something that feels connected to being in a community of practitioners, um, yeah, I go back to being on a high school football team
Hmm.
and having to work really hard for something I really wanted
Hmm.
with a group of people working together and that sense of community.
Yeah.
And that the next place that itch got scratched was being in a fraternity
Hmm.
in college, where for all the craziness and all of the dysfunction, it was a place that I felt a part of a community of like-minded people like I'd never felt before.
Yeah.
And so, being part of a meditation community feels like that's part of the wave that carried me, I suppose.
Yeah.
In a way, traveling the way I traveled, living the way I lived as an expat in Germany and Iran and Korea, and knocking around places in between, there's a whole community of travelers
True.
that
True.
I felt a member of and identified with. So I think, um, uh, growing up being raised Jewish in a Italian Roman Catholic community, I didn't have a lot of community. I didn't want my Jewish community because I thought they were weird. And I wish I could have been Catholic just to fit in. So, but that didn't work. So I suppose sports became my community because that was somehow non-denominational. It didn't matter if you could hit the ball. They didn't care if you were Jewish or throw the football or whatever you did. And there was that kind of just playing around with kids that you do. So, and maybe, wishing that I would have felt more like everybody else, and I didn't.
Seems to be there's something that happened between college and going to Germany, though. Like what made that leap for you to go from sports fraternity to then Germany?
Well, my best friend was getting married in Holland and wanted me to be his best man. So it was like I had been accepted at McGill University in a graduate program in psychology and asked for a deferred enrollment 1 year, and during which I became a bartender at a ski resort at Lake Tahoe and worked in another crazy bar. And then he invited me to be in his wedding in early July or something. So I'd never been to Europe, and I thought, woohoo, I'm going to Europe for the summer, and then I'm going to graduate school. And I just never came back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was no spiritual journey. No. I kind of I kind of relished that I wasn't on a spiritual journey.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to be on a spiritual journey.
Yeah, totally.
And in that way, maybe the message gets out to more people and makes sense to more people.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't a spiritual journey at all that brought you to the Dharma, but yet there was some kind of trust you felt in yourself, it sounds like, or trust in something like that decision for the flight to be canceled or not non-extended.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was, I couldn't say what that was. At the time, I was doing just a straight Tibetan practice, so it wasn't something that exactly felt like in the context of my practice, but I did experience my practice kind of carrying me. That's true. My mantra was something that was kind of going all the time, and just I trusted it, I guess.
Yeah. So the word that keeps coming to my mind, I don't know if this resonates for you at all, David, but sounds like you had a strong sense of self. Like it's not about spirituality. You just had a sense of self and followed yourself, your passions, and where they guided you.
Yeah, I guess. I really don't feel like I was trusting myself as much as I was just trusting being carried by something else.
Yeah. You were being carried.
Because, yeah, no. Mm-hmm. The invitation to Europe felt like, yeah, wow. The universe was colluding to get me to Europe, which would be a good thing for me. Mm-hmm. It felt all of it was like the universe was colluding to give me experiences for my education. It all felt like my education.
Yeah.
The traveling itself is an education and a practice, really.
Absolutely. And you were carried with it. David, this is beautiful. I think that you've answered all the questions that I wanted you to answer. Is there anything more you would like to add to the topic of just healing trauma, psychedelic healing, and Buddhism?
Well, an awakening experience is a trauma.
Yes.
And, it's like a moment when everything you know depending on who you are, doesn't make sense, isn't there, or whatever anymore, including the you that you think you are. And how I think, in a way, working with people who've had awakening experiences to be working with people who've had traumas, even if it's a positive. I've had an experience of being one with a tree, which, yeah, and what that's like. Okay, that's great. And there's a shadow to that too.
Sure.
And to ignore that is not in your best interest. So that comes to my mind.
Is there anything more you want to add about what the shadow is to that?
Oh, well, you could get inflated.
Yeah.
That would be one of the shadows. You could get deflated because it didn't meet up to your expectations of what the experience should have been or could have been, or what you read in books or something like that, I suppose. It just could, allow you a moment of such clarity that you realize your life is going to have to change dramatically because you cannot not change it anymore. And that's a trauma.
Indeed. Yeah.
Yeah. So like that,
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's like, okay, so how does my meditation practice come to, where is it in that moment?
Yeah, totally.
Where is my ability to make my mind a question mark there in that moment, rather than jumping to conclusions and catastrophizing about the future or agonizing about the past or whatever else I can do to entertain myself.
Yeah. So wise, David. So wise. Anything else you want to say that you want to add about your own journey, the clients that might be hearing this, to Zen students that are hearing this?
I think so. I made a few notes about things to hit. No, I got it all.
Your story is remarkable, actually. Yeah. It was like sitting back and listening to a movie. It was really that amazing.
Yeah, how come I'm so lucky? Is what I feel like, basically. How come I've been given, this gift of that journey?
Mm.
So gratitude for that. Doesn't feel like anything I did, really. So, yeah. Just somebody with no place to go and nothing to do. That's a Taoist image.
And look where it brought you, and all the people that you're impacting, right? All the benevolence that you're spreading. And certainly in my life, you have dramatically shifted. And I know everyone that you touch that you've dramatically shifted. So thank you for everything you've done and you continue to do. And maybe there'll be a second interview. We'll see.
Yeah, well, I think this might be, as long as 2 interviews, huh?
There's just I still have so many questions, but
Oh, well, if you still have questions, I appreciate questions.
okay. Well, let me ask you one more question.
Okay.
If you feel like you can share a personal trauma, you don't have to give into the content, but how your experience of understanding your mind, whether that be through your meditation practice or through your LSD experience, how did that help you with your own trauma?
Oh, well, I'll actually, I think you know about this because I think you read it, about my experience of going to Japan with my sister and brother-in-law and experiencing the trauma of my expectations about how we were going to introduce them to Japanese culture utterly unmet, dramatically unmet, and how I was able to sort of watch that happen, like watching a movie, and that space between what was happening and my reaction, and my space between where I was watching it from and my reaction, allowed me to just allow the space for them to discover Japanese culture in their own way and in ways I hadn't imagined, and how my meditation practice is about, again, making my mind a question mark is one way of saying it. Another way of saying it is not knowing is most intimate. To just allow ourselves to abide in the not knowing gets us closest to what is here now.
Oh my gosh, I love that. The abide in the not knowing gets us closer to what's here now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that ability to feel the space in between you and what was happening.
Yes, and to feel my own disappointment. Yes, there was. Was there judgment? Yes, there was, of them and me. Yes, there was. And not trying to squash that, but just going, oh yeah, not judging myself for judging. And again, there's more space, and it's a practice of including, not excluding.
That brings me to one other question, which is what you just described in the parts model. We would describe that you did parts on yourself. You did parts work on yourself. Like,
Yeah, I don't. Yes, that sounds right.
yeah, and which brought you back to self. Like you identified the judgment part, you identified this disappointment.
And it's what to say, not really so much of a conscious thing. It's like recognizing, oh, that's an apple and that's a pear.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm doing that, and without any framework other than that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But in essence, that's what happens. Yes, I understand that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and certainly, uh, I'm interested in what the 5-year-old felt like when her parents locked her out of the house when she didn't do something right, and how that's what's happening for her now as she's suffering the stress of being a new mother and blah, blah, blah. But she's got a meditation practice to integrate what she understands as she understands it.
Mm-hmm.
And comes to, a place of peace with what happened and what is happening now.
David, the story of you as a young boy counting and counting to the future and counting your ancestors and then your parents and then they will be dead, right?
Mm-hmm.
That in and of itself, you already were doing meditation. And
Yeah, I would agree. It was a meditation. It was the Tibetans would call it a death meditation. Of course, the Tibetans would say, if you don't get scared, you're not doing it right. And I never got scared doing that. It was always just kind of, they'll be dead. I'll be dead. Okay, back to the beginning. And
so even when you got to that I'll be dead too, you didn't have fear come up.
no, it was
And,
just fact.
and then just back to the beginning.
If I was, yeah, well, probably because it was just this, that's what I did rather than thinking, which seemed to get in the way of my sleeping. Because I would lie in bed thinking.
Okay, one last question. Death. Huge, huge topic, right?
Death.
So death is such a huge topic.
Oh yeah.
So in all of your experiences and as you're guiding your clients and students who have a fear of death,
I'm Do I have a fear of death? Is that the question?
Yeah, or if you were if you do, or if you're guiding others that have a fear of death, how do you hold that?
Um, well, first thing that comes to mind is a story about somebody asking the Buddha, what is the length of a human life? And he said, one thought moment. There are 64 thought moments in the snap of a finger. Which is to say, we're constantly dying. I'm not the same person that started this interview. Okay, yeah. But there's all those psychological deaths we experience when our expectations don't get met or something happens. We have a trauma. The person before the trauma is kind of dead. Now there's this other person who's had a trauma. Mm-hmm. So, if somebody's facing a terminal diagnosis and they're going to die, well, I find them to be kind of pretty clear, actually, usually.
Yeah.
If they're just worried about it because maybe or something or whatever, well, then, it's just like, well, what is the experience of the fear? Where do you feel it? What do you notice when you notice the fear rather than being the fear? Just exploring the experience.
Right.
Something like that. Whether it's death or, fear of flying, yes, that's death, really, in the form of an airplane. So, like that.
Thank you. That was so helpful. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. David, it's been wonderful. We went over, so I'm so sorry. I hope you don't have an appointment right after, because we definitely went over.
No, the next appointment is feeding the cats who just came in to remind me that my next appointment's with them.
I saw that. It's beautiful. Yeah. So David, I'm so honored. Truly, this feels so full circle for me.
Well, thank you. I feel a bit like I've been indulged in telling my story.
Oh, it's been amazing to hear your story. And for you, the viewers that are listening, there's going to be a bio about David in the podcast, so you can hear more about David there. And thank you again, David.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Trauma, Psychedelics, and Buddhism with Karen Sprinkle. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. To learn more or to grab your copy of The Thriving Self, visit karensprinkle.com. Karen and this podcast do not endorse or encourage the illegal use of psychedelics.